This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Hey everybody, it is time for Party Loaded, video game time, video game o'clock, as they say in the biz. Did they say that in the biz? I've got no idea. At any rate, it is Wednesday, the 3rd of July. We're into the new month. It is episode 184. My name's Luke Retallick, and joining me tonight, we have the full crew. We have Matt, the Game Dad Diet, we have Adrian Chia, and we have Christian Paulson Brown. Gentlemen, how are you all? What's going on?
Good.
Hello, gentle listeners.
Game o'clock. Game o'clock?
If there was a game o'clock, what time do you think it would be?
Any time is game o'clock.
Any time is game o'clock? I tell you what, 2 a.m. it was Destiny o'clock last night for me. That's for damn sure.
It's game o'clock somewhere in the world, right?
Hey, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's like Twitch, the site that never sleeps. Very much so, yeah. Well, cool. Well, we have lots of games to be chatting about no matter what the time tonight. And let's not mess around. Let's dive straight in. So, Matt, I'd like to throw it to you first tonight. What's going on in your week?
That's unfortunate because I didn't play anything.
Why is that? Because you were a little busy with something adjacent.
I was very busy over the weekend. So, in Western Australia, if you're not in Western Australia, they just Scream West recently announced like 6 weeks ago that they were doing an interactive games fund. So they were actually going to be funding game development in WA for the first time ever, pretty much. And so they had $100,000 that they were going to be giving out, and I was getting in my submission. I've got a team together. I've mentioned the game that we were working on previously on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So we've put in a submission for a full version of Recaptive, the game where it's about an artificial intelligence stuck in a game and you have to help save it. So yeah, we've put together a full pitch for that, expanded on the puzzles that I'm super excited about. Like, I was describing some of the puzzles to co-workers and students and the other team members and everything, and everybody was laughing and going, "Thanks, I hate it." And that's exactly what I wanted, basically. Like, I wanted that kind of response out of the puzzle design.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was really, really interesting. Like filling out a funding form like that and everything. It sounds incredibly boring, but just kind of thinking that far ahead about games, I find super fascinating as a producer myself. Just being able to sit down and basically say, this is what is possible.
Yeah.
This is our budget. This is how much time we're going to spend on it. And I should say, so our game is a small budget game. In the grand scheme of things, like the $20,000 maximum that we can apply for, we've applied for the full amount, but others could come in with the low amounts, and I don't know what sort of game they're making, unless they're making like tic-tac-toe or something like that, just really, really tiny.
Or they've just completely lowballed themselves, thinking that they're going to be able to build something for much less when that's maybe not reflective of reality. So
exactly, or that lowballing gives them a better opportunity to get any sort of money.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we put in our application and everything like that, and I was doing the math on how much work we put into it over the Global Game Jam, and in the work that I had been doing on it post Global Game Jam, and everything else, and put together this budget, and in addition to the request and how much work that we were putting ahead. And mind you, like we're not estimating a massive amount of work to actually finish this thing, because it's a fairly straightforward project. And yeah, $50,000 to make this thing.
Jeez.
Like, the game development is so ridiculously expensive. Like, and this is such a small project, but it's one of those things where we could quite easily make this and not bat an eyelash at the fact that we're not getting paid for it. But when you actually start measuring up how much it's worth and how much your time is worth, holy crap.
Yeah.
Just, man, we seriously do undervalue ourselves in the games industry. So I'm glad that we have the opportunity now that we can actually apply for games funding here in WA.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely awesome, and massive kudos to our good friend V for putting a lot of the work in to get this actually happening in the first place. So yeah, no, it's been fantastic. So cool. When do you expect to hear back about that? Is that going to be like a soon thing or several months or?
I don't have any idea. Pretty much what happens now is that all the applications go to a review board, and apparently they've got some big name Melbourne developers and elsewhere in Australia actually reviewing the different submissions.
Okay.
They will basically list out the ones that they think are best, and they'll be shortlisted, and then make a decision from those shortlisted ones, which is the ones that are going to get funding. But depending on how many applications they got, it could be very, very easy, or it could be a much more time-consuming task. Knowing how many game developers are in WA and the ones that I've heard about, I could see maybe 10 or 15 submissions, and at $20,000 a pop, they can fund 5, unless there's a whole bunch of submissions in there of people being like, I want $5,000 or I want $10,000. So it could be any number of games that end up getting funded at the end of the day. It could be a couple of weeks. It could be a couple of months. I don't know. But I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah. I mean, the impression I got too, that this was very much the intended kind of first round of funding of this type. They're looking at doing more stuff in future as well. So
yeah, it's a pilot fund. So the whole idea is basically to see how it works, what the quality of the submissions that come in is, what the glaring issues are that are shared between submissions that they might need to train game developers in the state to not do. The sort of things that game developers are responding with and that they might need to remove. There was some questions in there that are very clearly from the film background that Screen West has. And a lot of it's basically how the hell does this apply to games? Because with film, they have concerns hey, so this movie is based on a comic book. And so you need to show that you have the rights to develop that thing based on that IP.
Right.
Whereas an indie game developer having the rights to develop somebody's comic book or movie or whatever, that's just incredibly unlikely for an indie developer at this sort of level. And it makes sense for them to have that in there, but it feels like it should be less of a concern than it is made out to be as far as game devs go. But yeah, that's a tiny thing, and the more I chatted with V about it and kind of wrapped my head around the understanding of it, the more I kind of realized that I shouldn't be worried about that part at all, essentially.
Yeah. They're more there for any weird cases that sort of come across that are not representative of a lot of the people we already know about, yeah.
Exactly, like Black Lab and the fact that they have the Battlestar Galactica IP, they would need to fill that out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They have to show that they have the rights to that, which they clearly have, otherwise their game wouldn't have been on the market for very long, right? So
I guess theoretically that might apply to something like the Dark Room as well,
yes.
Which we spoke about a number of months ago, because that actually belongs to another sort of business entity in reality. So yeah, cool. Yeah, I find this sort of stuff super fascinating, so I'm really curious to see where it goes from here. So, but no doubt we won't find out for a while, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think you can be excused for not having actually played anything else this week.
Well, to be fair, I made time for Destiny, but nobody wants to hear me talk about Destiny anymore.
Yeah, I think it's reached that saturation point where, despite the fact that I've played a shitload of it too, I'm happy to just kind of let it bubble in the background for a bit.
Yep.
But a game that we've spent no time talking about this year at all, Adrian. Dive right in, man.
I think we spent a bit of time talking about it when Christian brought
I think he's
it
being
before.
sarcastic.
Then it was completely lost on Adrian. Sekiro. So I flogged a bit of old Warhammer I had lying around in order to fund the purchase of Sekiro. I also decided to play it on the PC, which I do not regret at all. Especially once Christian informed me that you can plug a PS4 controller into a PC, which I didn't know. I did not know you could do that.
Really?
Yeah. I've been using an Xbox wireless controller for the last, 5 years.
Yeah.
And I had no idea you could just plug a PS4 controller in and use it.
So that's supported by Steam now, I think, but not all other platforms support that necessarily. So you can get input mappers to fix that. So
yeah. And Christian put me onto the fact that Sekiro is not the in-game buttons aren't supported even through Steam. But there was a bit of modding that could be done because the files are hidden in there. And you just need to bring out its hidden potential. And so now I've got full PlayStation controller with PlayStation buttons. I tend to play a bit more on my PC than I do on my PS4 anyway, so that way my wife can use the TV, etc. So anyway, good times. Sekiro is so good, and
Yes.
I know we've said that a lot, and
Say it more.
yeah, even when Christian was describing Sekiro, I was like, all right, shut the fuck up, we're getting into Sekiro's game. No, sorry, no, that's a bit intense. It's not what I thought.
If that was actually going on at that time, I giggle in delight with how much saturation was going on with Warframe at that time. So you were totally eating what you got.
No, it's not Destiny. I didn't think that. We That's right. No one's safe. I did actually think that, but it was more the fact that like I knew Christian was excited about Sekiro, and I knew I was going to play it at some point, and I was just trying to like limit the amount that I heard about the game before giving it a go. But having now played it, it's. I mean, when it comes to the end of the year, I imagine Game of the Year is going to probably be Sekiro for me. It's intensely good, and I mean, there's not much I could say about what. There's not more I can add than what has already been said, but I just feel like it's a game that is ultimately rewarding in a way that I haven't felt in a lot of other games in a long time. I mean, other games that are like looter games like Diablo and Warframe and Destiny, there's a satisfaction that comes from gaining loot and sort of earning it. But this kind of satisfaction in Sekiro, it's the kind of satisfaction you get from like learning how to build a car or like learning how to do a manual skill where the only way to get better at it is to just like actively improve. And it's a real testament of your own skill. And I feel like I can feel really proud of what I've accomplished when I play the game. We were just talking briefly before beginning recording about a boss that I had encountered, and I messaged Christian probably only about an hour ago and said, this boss, like, fuck this boss, seriously, it's ridiculous. But then in the matter of, 20 minutes, I had died and gone in a couple of times and adjusted my strategy and sort of really changed up the way that I was approaching it, and through that method had sort of pinpointed like one little area of like an exploit or a weakness, which it's probably not an exploit because it's probably intended to be recognized.
It's like a strategy.
A strategy, and by finding that strategy through dying multiple times and getting used to the combos that the bosses put out, I was able to begin exploiting it. And there's a gleeful sort of triumph in those little moments, and the game is kind of populated by that all the way through, and one thing I really enjoy is that even the most basic of enemies, like I'm right near the end of the game now, I'm pretty sure, and I've upgraded my health and my stats and my actual raw attack power has been upgraded, so I can go back to lower areas of the game and just smash little dudes. But if I'm too careless, I've been killed multiple times by like shitto samurai that like are the first thing you fight in the game, like beginner samurai. I've been killed by those dudes heaps of times just because I've gotten cocky and thought that I can just get away by button bashing my way even through basic dudes.
Yeah, so, it never scales that far. Like you do, your attack power does improve and your health does increase, but it's not like a huge difference. It's not like a classic RPG or anything like that.
Yeah, the game does a good job of keeping your ego in check. And when you start like smashing a couple of bosses, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm really good at this game. And then you fight like a really hard boss, and you're like, why did I think that I could do this? This is ridiculous. But yeah, there's great satisfaction in overcoming those obstacles, and it rarely happens, but I've taken tons of screenshots in this game as well. Like I don't often do that, but I've found myself literally going, what the fuck, quite a few times, and like, what the hell is that? And like, whoa, like actually exclaiming out loud at sort of some really like pretty areas of the game. So,
I forget, does it have an in-game photo mode?
No.
It's just PC screen caps. Yeah,
it's just the Steam screen capture. But yeah, I mean that's it really. I've just really, really enjoyed it, and there's a lot of virtues to the game. So and like a lot of the Souls titles, it has that really awesome show don't tell narrative style, which I find really intriguing, and like I really like it because it's really vague and there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of a lot of vagueness in the dialogue and the story, and I like that it's sort of incumbent on you as the player to kind of interpret it and research it and find out what it's about. So
super environmental as well, the storytelling. Like,
yeah,
there's
absolutely.
so many little details, every tiny little thing. If you like read enough about it or think hard enough about it, then there's like significance to so much of the environmental details. It's really cool.
Yeah. It's one of the things I really enjoyed when I was watching your stream, playing it on PC, actually, Christian, the fact that you were sort of, giving commentary to a lot of that stuff as you played. That was awesome to listen to.
I mean, yeah, I was trying to, but then there's just so much to it that after playing through it 5 times and watching YouTube videos, could remember. But that's part of what I like about it, is that it is so deep that even like a super fan like me, there's always like another layer of depth to understanding the lore of the game.
And I'm not normally a new game plus kind of guy, but I definitely know that I'll be doing that for this game, or probably straight away. Like as soon as I finish it,
I was going to say, like, because you're probably what you're talking about with learning the strategies and sort of incrementally getting better at each boss. The way I felt was that, like, after I defeated the boss, I was like kind of felt empowered and like oh, I want to do that again, because it's like learning a song in a rhythm game, like in Beat Saber or something. Where you know how to do it now, and you want to have fun doing it again. So like, I almost wish there was a boss rush mode in the game, so I could just fight the bosses over and over again and just get better at it. But like, you will notice that if you do New Game Plus, is like you'll breeze through like bosses that you had difficulty with before, just because you've got that muscle memory and that practice now.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Like, that is another reason to go back to New Game Plus, is just to get in there and show those bosses who is boss. Now that I've been through the game, and I'm looking forward to trouncing some big boys and getting in there. But yeah, I mean, and I know, Matt, you were hesitant about Sekiro. Is there anything that I've said about the game that maybe leads you to maybe give it another try or give it a go?
I really, really want to try it. Like, I really do. But I'm also kind of happy with it being one of those games that I kind of love from afar. Yeah, like, there's a lot of games like that. I think it's almost a little bit romantic, Like, as a game developer, I can look at Sekiro and go, "That's a fucking good game,"
Yeah.
And I don't need to play it to kind of see that, but I do want to play it, and I do want to kind of get a sense for that. But yeah, like, it's just really interesting a game, and I once I have time and have the ability to sit down and just kind of, focus on it for a couple of days, I think I will do that, because you can't hear all these amazing things about the design of it without basically being like, well, as a game designer, I'm obligated to give it a try,
Yeah. It's I don't think you'd regret it, but it's certainly like an acquired taste, like just like any of the Souls games. Not that it is strictly a Souls game, but it's made by From.
I literally cannot think of a game that I have regret playing that was really, like, reviewed very well. It's more of a matter, like, I can walk away from it and go, that just wasn't for me. But regret is a very strong word, I think.
Yeah. The final thing I'll say on it is that it just came to mind, is that I think it's quite a good evolution of this kind of Souls genre kind of game, where there's a lot of like interfacing and sort of mechanics of the game that have kind of been smoothed out as you look back. I mean, I didn't play a lot of Bloodborne, maybe Christian can comment on it, but I feel like it compared to the other Souls games, it's a bit more, it's certainly more accessible in the way that it's got like tutorials and, well, no tutorial, but it's got like instructions, and it explains mechanics a bit more clearly than those other games.
Bloodborne was like a half step. It was very much going in that direction, but Sekiro went further in that way. And then Elden Ring, which is like the upcoming game, sounds like it's kind of going down the other path, where Elden Ring is going more towards the more RPG elements, customization and character builds and that sort of thing. So
interesting.
There's a kind of like two prongs of From. It's like the streamlined like experience, and then like the more open RPG experience.
Yeah, sure. Prompt. I certainly feel that the combat in Sekiro it's so good that it's kind of like when you look back at old black and white TVs, or like, before we had like flat screen TVs, and you probably said to yourself, I don't know how this picture could be any better than it currently is. Or, when you look at CG in the 90s and you're like, that's amazing. Like, how's it going to get any better than that?
I feel like we do this every fucking generation.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like Sekiro combat is at that point where I'm like, I don't know how this could get better. Like, this is so good. So,
And
but
I
we'll
feel
see.
like that's partly design-wise a consequence of there only being one weapon in the game. That every encounter, every boss fight is tailored specifically because they know exactly what your toolkit is and how, like, what your options are and how you're going to approach that combat. Whereas if it was a more traditional Souls game and you had like a whole inventory of weapons, then it just can't be designed as elegantly, I think.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
It's a very, very tight design.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, there we go, Sekiro. So I'm on board. I'm a convert. Yeah, fantastic. And I'll definitely be New Game Plusing it. So I'm looking forward to that.
But are you going to New Game Plus it another 4 times? That's the question.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm as Sekiro mad as Christian, but we'll see how long it holds. I mean, who knows? I'm known to be hard and fast when it comes to stuff, so we'll see. Yeah.
Right, cool.
I'm sure.
Yep. No one else is touching that? Cool, let's move on.
No,
All right.
No one ever wants to touch it.
I've been playing a game that you've played, Adrian, that I hadn't played before. Well, I'd started it before, but then I dropped it, and that's Divinity Original Sin 2.
Oh,
Yay.
we can all
Awesome.
talk
Yeah.
about this. Fucking go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've all played it, then I did previously get up to like where you just escape Fort Joy at the start, and then I just before, like, just as you're getting the collars off, pretty much, I dropped the game, and for some reason I think I was distracted by something or something happening in my life. I can't remember, but I was enjoying it, but I dropped it. But now I've restarted, and I'm definitely. I haven't gotten further than that yet. I'm still in Fort Joy in the kind of first area, but I can feel that I'm more motivated to stick with it.
Yeah.
And I've got its hooks in me a little deeper this time, and I'm looking forward to getting further. So
Definitely a commitment, that game.
Yeah. It's one of the games like at the top of my list of shame, pretty much, that I need to go back and actually finish. And it's one of those ones where I could just replay over and over again because it's just so much fun and there's just so many different ways to approach every situation in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to know my shameful secret?
What?
I didn't finish it. I got right near the end, and I remember, I think I backed myself into a corner. Like I did something meta where I like fucked up and like instead of engaging with some enemies in a particular area, I snuck past them. But in doing so, I think I broke the pathing, and I ended up like overriding a save state or something, so where I couldn't get out of that situation.
Oh no!
And then I gave up, and I was like, fuck it. Like I'm close enough to being at the end. That's enough.
Jeez, that's a bad beat,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, but anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Christian.
I think one of the things that tipped me over the edge to get back into it is the recent announcement that Larian Studios is doing Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
And because I love Baldur's Gate so much, and like it's kind of been playing on my mind, like I really want to play Baldur's Gate again, but I'm like, hang on, I'll just play Original Sin 2 because that's a very similar experience, and then Baldur's Gate 3 will be waiting for me when it's ready. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the key difference will be, for anyone who's like a massive Forgotten Realms D&D fan, it'll have all those hooks as well. So yeah, interesting. Which I very much am. So
I remember because Divinity to Original Sin was the first style of RPG that I've played in that way, where it's kind of isometric with multiple party members, and they're all controlled separately, and they're all kind of their own characters. And I'd never played an RPG like that before.
People call them CRPGs.
CRPGs, yeah, okay. So I'd never played any Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale's, Planescape Torment, none of that.
Yeah.
And
Neverwinter wasn't like that. Neverwinter was still single character, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go, yeah. But I remember thinking about these kinds of games and being immediately put off and thinking like, I have to control that many characters and they all do different things. Like, it just seemed like too much micromanagement for me at the time. But I guess that was before I was even into D&D and that kind of genre. So having now played Divinity 2, I'm like, okay, I get it now. This is awesome. And I regret not having played like Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate and that.
You could probably go back to Baldur's Gate 2.
You
as
reckon?
long as you can, as long as you can wrap your head around THAC0 and because it's advanced D&D, so it's like really old where like armor value, the negative is a better armor value, that sort of thing. So
yeah, righto. Okay.
But I mean, most of it's automated, but just in the background, it's running a really old system of D&D.
Yeah, because like I love Divinity Original Sin 2, but Pillars of Eternity is like way more intense. There's way more to micromanage, and there's so many more abilities that you have to understand. Whereas Divinity feels, again, in much the same way that Sekiro is a really tightly designed game, like Divinity is also a really tightly designed game. Like, you have the uniqueness of each character class, and they can do some weird and wacky stuff because you can basically just do whatever you want. But you still have a very limited number of skills within that to use. Whereas Pillars of Eternity is just freaking insane. Like, I feel like I need a GM book to be able to actually sit down and play Pillars of Eternity.
Yeah, right. One thing I remember, I don't know if you've had this experience, Christian, depending on where you are in the game. It's not spoiler or anything. I remember Divinity 2 Original Sin being crazy hard early on.
Yes.
And then it got super easy. Like it like flipped. Like it was really, really hard. And then I think I unlocked a couple of really good spells. And then as soon as that happened, the game kind of flipped and it went from being the opposite. Like it was like really easy to get through battles and stuff. I don't know if you guys have had that.
Yeah, hearing that, because I'd heard that before, that it does get much easier. That's another part of what convinced me to go back too, is because my first experience, it was really difficult. Like the kind of swampy area just as soon as you escape Fort Joy, it's like super difficult. And I was like, I was having situations where there was like multiple paths I can walk down, and each one just felt like there was a super deadly encounter at the end of it. And I didn't know where to, I didn't know, like, it felt wrong. It felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. But learning that if I just, knuckled down and maybe leveled up a couple more times, there is a hump that I do get over, and then it gets easier. That's motivated me more as well.
Yeah. Enhanced Edition also actually fixed that. Like, Enhanced Edition actually added a whole bunch of new stuff and also fixed the fact that the starting area is the hardest part of the game.
Cool, because I did notice that I couldn't have loaded my old saves even if I wanted to, because they weren't part of the Enhanced Edition. So it's interesting.
Is Enhanced Edition a free patch when you buy it on Steam? Sweet.
Yep.
That's good to know. So I got to say, congratulations, Christian. You have never sounded as old man as you have to me since saying the word Thaco. Congratulations. Yeah.
I'll wear that with pride.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good one. Cool. All right. Well, I'd like to change things up a little bit and talk about something that is absolutely over the top bombastic and totally nothing like the last couple of games that we've just talked about. I'm going to chat about what I've been playing this week, which is Judgment. So the game from the creators of the Yakuza series. This is the new game using, I think it uses the Yakuza Dragon engine from 6 and the Kiwami 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah, I'm almost certain because it very much like has the same sort of feel. So I'll preface what I'm about to say by basically saying up front, this is, for all intents and purposes, a freaking Yakuza game with the way that it plays. It's very much what you're used to in all those games. There's a few key differences, but at its heart, if you enjoy the Yakuza series, you'll enjoy this game because it's really, really good and it's that kind of thing. So you basically play as this guy who is a private investigator, but he's actually a former lawyer. Like he's a disgraced sort of attorney who's been working in Japan. And the backstory that you pretty much get immediately is that what he did as an attorney is he actually managed to get a guy off murder, which is a super uncommon thing because something like 99% of all sort of tried cases result in a guilty conviction. But he managed to get this one guy off, but then basically got disgraced out of the his position because that guy then went and got himself locked up for murder once again and then got convicted. So it's almost like he got a guy off only for him to go and kill his wife sort of thing. So, basically tarnished his name, tarnished the name of his firm. So he left in disgrace and then he becomes a private investigator sort of many years later. But this character, the first big difference between Judgment and the Yakuza series of games is that Kiryu, who's the main character from the Yakuza games, he's almost like an intentionally kind of wooden character in a lot of ways. Like he's kind of like a reluctant hero, and that he's very sort of stiff, and like a lot of the humor that kind of exudes from him and his tough guy image is the fact that he's not super charismatic, if that makes sense. This guy's the opposite. So the main character in this game, whose name is Takayuki Yagami, or just Tuck for short, he's very much like a movie star kind of persona, and I think that's because he's actually played by a celebrity over in Japan who I don't know very well. Christian, you might know more about who it is.
I don't know exactly who it is, but I know he is a celebrity, and I know he did play a character that's very similar to this game character before. So there's a kind of like another level of enjoyment that Japanese fans get from that.
I think so. Yeah, obviously it's not the same sort of click for us, but what it results in is that the character as a lead character is super watchable, and he's like quite likable in a way that Kiryu wasn't initially. And I'm really getting drawn into the story because the character acting is a lot stronger than what I remember in a lot of the Yakuza games. So which is super good. And then the rest of the game is just like the icing on the cake because it's still all of that awesome sort of street brawler, tight kind of, gang sort of busting combat moves that you like to sort of get in and pick up bikes and slam them over people's heads and, literally throw people into walls and all this sort of shit. Tak does this really cool move, which hasn't existed in the Yakuza games before, where he's got a bunch of finishes that actually revolve around him sort of running up to walls and then like basically springing off them to deliver the blow. So you actually look for opportunities to break away from guys that you're fighting and run at a wall and then just bounce straight off it back into them, which I think is really fun. So the combat stuff's a little simpler than what I remember in the last few Yakuza games. They haven't gone into like a whole bunch of different styles. He pretty much has two styles, one which is designed for sort of dealing with mobs and one that's sort of more sort of single target damage, which is cool. So you can sort of switch between the two. But it's nowhere near as complicated as what the other games have had, where you have like, sometimes up to 3 or even 6 fighting styles to pick from if you've got multiple characters. So that's good. But like the setting, it is Kamurocho from the other Yakuza games. It's that one sort of setting in Japan that's like a fictional adaptation of like a real location. But it's funny, like the opening stages of the game are very much designed to sort of set a few missions just to sort of orient you around the city. And it's almost like I went in and I just went, motherfucker, don't condescend to me. I know where the shit Pink Street is. I've done this plenty of times before. So you know exactly where you're going. So you just wander around. Everything looks super familiar in that respect, so it's really good. But there are definitely Yakuza characters in the game. That one that there was that controversy around a few months back where they had to actually redo the face modeling for the character because the actor got done for drug charges in Japan, so they had to remove his likeness from the game. As it turns out, he's actually quite a major character, so he would have appeared quite a bit, which makes sense why they went to the efforts to kind of do that. So... But yeah, so far I'm a massive fan of this game. It is really freaking good. My favorites in the Yakuza series are probably Yakuza 0 and Kiwami 2, Kiwami 2 being the highest on my list. I, at the moment, would probably place this between the two of those. So it's really freaking good. And for people who are interested in getting into this style of game, you don't have to have played any of the others for it to make sense. Like, it's a total standalone sort of experience. So there's a good incentive for people who don't want to have to play through multiple Yakuza titles. So there you go.
I was just thinking, I wonder what the actual Yakuza think of the game Yakuza.
They actually love it. I know
Do
they
they?
love it. Yeah, yeah.
There you go.
The director of the series has like definitely hung out with Yakuza, and like if you see him in real life, he looks like a Yakuza. He's not,
wow.
he's like I know that they like it from what I've read.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's funny too that you mentioned that just before you go on, that there was some controversy that came out in the news earlier this week, which isn't in our news tonight because it was sort of a minor thing. But apparently one of the actors from one of the Yakuza games, they were actually
6.
Yeah, 6. They were actually talking about sort of doing a similar thing and removing his likeness from the game because he had some revealed ties to organised crime that went back about 5 years. I read the article. All it was is that this dude actually attended a party that, as it turned out, was funded by some Yakuza members like 5 years ago, and he didn't even know about it at the time. But this is how seriously they take this kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
Japanese legal system is very strange.
yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to briefly mention Pierre Taki. That's the actor who got scrubbed from Judgment. He also played Olaf in Kingdom Hearts 3 in Japanese, and he got scrubbed from that too. So
Wow.
the Olaf the snowman got is it? He was the snowman, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Also got scrubbed.
There you go.
Poor Olaf.
Yep. They don't mess around over there, that's for sure. But we don't mess around over here either. Let's take a quick bumper and dive into some news.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
Yeah, so some exciting news that people were looking forward to was the announcement of Pokemon Sword and Shield. And of course, last week was it last week or the week before we talked about the
I don't know, man. I feel like it might have been a month ago.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Feels like forever. There was a bit of disappointment around what fans had labelled Dexit, which is, of course, a joke around Brexit, involving the fact that the National Pokedex would not be available in the upcoming Pokemon Sword and Shield game. So Game Freak have responded in a way. Actually, the series designer and producer Junichi Masuda has responded on Twitter, just basically saying that he understands how people feel. It was a difficult decision for them to limit the number of Pokemon in the game, and he wanted to clarify that just because they're not available in this game doesn't mean they might not be available in future games. And that's really all he said. So not much of a affirmation either way from Game Freak. So and certainly doesn't assuage any fans that were upset about the national decks not being in the game. So it's interesting because I remember chatting to Christian during the week and about when we did talk about it, and coming down probably more on your side of the argument, Luke, where I am sort of now more in the vein that it is something that they should do, and I think it's mainly around the idea that like this is what the game is. Like it's about collecting Pokemon and cataloging Pokemon. And like you have one job, like just do your job.
I've kind of come down on that side more too, and I know like I've heard the arguments against it, you know, the dev costs and all that sort of stuff. But my view now is more like I prefer the old stuff. Then like if you're going to have to cut Pokemon out of the game to give me something else, I don't want that new thing. I want the Pokemon, and like that's just my opinion as a consumer. I'm not saying that they're going to make less money or it's going to be less successful, but as a Pokemon fan, I would rather they just give me all the Pokemon and don't give me whatever else they were planning on giving me. So
it's such a tricky situation. Like I totally understand both sides, and especially particularly the side that Matt was reminding us about with regards to the human cost of development with that stuff that's way more complicated than we could possibly ever imagine when it comes to animating all of those different creatures. But I think maybe the biggest thing that people just want in this situation, because they're effectively looking at, like, if it's going to be treated almost like a new line of Pokemon games, which is everything that comes onto like consoles instead of handhelds, like Switch onwards and any revisions of the Switch that they do in future, I think people kind of just don't want their confidence broken. Like they want to know that the time and effort they're going to put into the Pokemon from this point forwards is going to be rewarded, and they're not going to have this happen again. So
and that's why the statement's so weak, I think, because it's really like a non-statement. Like there's no new information in there. It's not satisfying. Like if they'd said something like, we're sorry, but like, you know, the Pokemon aren't all going to come to Sword and Shield. That's never going to happen. But we like in future Switch titles or like main console titles, you know, we will be you will be able to import those Pokemon from Sword and Shield into the next game, and then add on to whatever Pokemon we've created for that new game, and then combined, it'll be the complete Pokedex or nearly the complete Pokedex or something like that.
Super hard to commit to that kind of thing this early on.
It is, yeah. But like, I'd rather them just not say anything, because I feel like the statement just didn't do anything other than just reflame the argument.
And I think for me, like thinking about it sort of at length, the other reason that I come down in this camp and agree that it should involve national decks and fans should get what they want is purely because the game has not, ironically, evolved over its entire lifetime. Like, the game mechanics are the same. You do the same thing. There's no story to speak of in any particular Pokemon game. There's nothing about the Pokemon games that has changed and gotten drastically different over the lifetime of Pokemon. So to have them remove the National Pokedex, which is the one of the cornerstones of the game, it doesn't feel like they're giving us something in return to make up for that. It just feels like they're taking away from the game and not adding anything that makes that worthwhile. You could argue they're adding new Pokemon, but that's not really what people really want, I think, in that regard.
I don't know. It's a super complicated situation. I can see the points on all sides. I just hope the game's really good to you know, make it something that we still want to play, at least. Yeah.
I think, and I kind of hope that what we see happen is that the Pokemon that we're getting now in this new 3D iteration with all the new animations and all the extra work put into them becomes the new standard. And even if there's a new 4K HD Nintendo Switch 2, that this will still be the quality level that those Pokemon remain at.
Which I think is totally fine.
Yeah, like, because at least at that point, right, like they've got a style, they can stick with that style, they can go with that style over games, and that way they can come back to the national decks in future, right? And actually be like, all your Pokemon are in one game again, right? But we've had to work to that point, because people are saying, oh, well, why didn't they just take 3 years or whatever? I think they wouldn't have gotten it done in that time. Like, I think that the immense amount of work required to do it and the balancing is just so difficult to do that it's going to be, 2 or 3 more Pokemon games before we have another Pokemon game where all the Pokemon are in one game. Like,
you know what it kind of reminds me of in a weird way is actually Smash. Like how over the course of a few different Smash games, they've kind of had to rotate the roster a little bit and not including everything until this one that's just come out recently. So,
but then, ironically, the the Smash game before this was on 3DS and Wii U in HD using the same models, but they can't do it with the Pokemon from 3DS.
Not different. They're the same models in terms of like their skeletal mesh is, but you laugh, but it is different actual like 3D models because you can't render the sort of 3D models that you have on the higher resolution on the 3DS. Like,
yeah, I get that. I think that the hope was that they had the forethought to plan ahead with that, and the 3D models that they did create for 3DS, like whatever, I'm confident that they could have made them like possible to port up, but like that had to be possible somehow.
Yeah, no, I totally see where you're coming from with that, and yes, you're right. Like what they could have done is not up-resed the Pokemon models and just had a Nintendo 3DS graphical quality game on the Switch, and I think people would have been fine with that.
Yeah. And just brings of the sort of Switch features with regards to, the docking and playing on screen and yada, yada. Yeah. Mm.
You know what I would have been okay... The last thing I just want to say on it, you know what I would have been okay with is if they turned around and said, we're rebooting Pokemon and all the Pokemon in the new Pokemon game, it's a new generation of Pokemon, that's why you can't have the old ones. If they'd given me none of the old generation and said, this is a new generation of Pokemon, because there's too fucking many of them and we can't keep up. So we're starting again. Here's a brand new region, brand new starters. This is a new Pokemon world. That I would have been okay with.
I would have liked that too.
Yeah, but I think that actually would have been quite good. It would have been like a fresh start and kind of solved a bit of the issues. And fans probably would have been like, yeah, fair enough, that's good. Because, up until this point, the last Pokemon game we've had, you have been able to import all the Pokemon to your heart's desire. So why not make it a clean break and then, start again? I think that would have been a good idea.
I think that a lot of players that are complaining about Dexit would not like that. Just because of the fact that the whole reason they dislike the Dexit is because of the fact that they love their old Pokemon. I think like what it kind of shows is that the Pokemon company has different priorities from what the fans have. And like the fans are always going to be interested in new Pokemon, but I think the Pokemon company is more interested in a lot of new Pokemon than the fans, who would probably be totally fine if a new game only had like 10 or 20 new Pokemon. Yeah. And what they're essentially doing is they're just exacerbating the issue for themselves going forward, right? And they could just basically say, yes, this is a revamp. We're starting over. These Pokemon won't be in Nintendo games moving forward. But how much is that going to piss people off? Because
it's like fucking Transformers.
Every Pokemon is somebody's fan game, somebody's fan favorite, right? Yeah. So.
It's exactly like Transformers. Like all of the new generations and types of Transformers they did, like a lot of the movement done around that, marketing, merchandising,
You watch your dirty mouth.
It's true, Adrian. You fucking know in your heart of hearts, it's true.
My shelf of Transformers only supports your theory, so...
Yeah, fair enough. Nice.
So let's move on to some other news. Unfortunately, all the news I've got to cover tonight is just going to be pissed off game dad, so I apologize in advance.
Yep. Open that bucket of bile. I'm ready for it.
Actually, like the Steam Summer Sale. We're going to open up with this first. Thankfully, it does seem to be slowly moving towards having a happy-ish ending. Like I say that when we started the podcast, the news seemed all bad, but I'm starting to see news that's a little bit different. People are seeing improvement. But basically, yeah. So Steam started up this new summer sale that they call the Grand Prix. It had massive design problems. So they've got all these things that are gamifying a whole lot of aspects about Steam. So they've gamified your wish lists, they've gamified reviews, they've gamified all this stuff. Like they've gamified playing games. So you go and play games, and by playing games, you earn points, and doing certain things in those games earns you points, which you can redeem to increase your team's, speed in the race and everything like this.
It's like, yo, dog, we heard you like games, so we put some games in your games to go with the games.
So that latter point actually resulted in users finding out they could go and mod a game, because one of the things that you could do to earn points was this really, really simple thing, but the item that you had to use was really rare to come by. But somebody made a mod for that game that basically gave you hundreds of copies of that item. So you could go in, and because the Grand Prix doesn't care that the game's modded, you can just use a shit ton of those items, and bam, you have hundreds of points that actually translate into real cash.
Huh.
Like, it was pretty freaking messed up. They shut it down within like 24 to 48 hours, but like that's the sort of level of fuckery that is in this sale right now. But the big thing was for indies that Valve had not communicated this one part of the game, that the most important part of the game, to players at all. Like the people buying games just didn't understand very well how it works. So in the sale, you basically, if your team wins, they randomly select somebody from in that team, and that person will receive a game that's at the top of their wish list. But they don't say that in the sale stuff. They basically say that your most desired items from your wish list will become yours.
Yeah.
And the phrasing of it resulted in a whole bunch of people being like, "Oh shit, I need to reduce my wish list so that the only the things that I really want are on it." And they ended out unwishlisting a whole bunch of games, and a whole bunch of indie devs were seeing massive drops in their wishlisting, like over the course of like 24 to 48 hours, from like, you know, basically like 30 to 40%, just a massive, massive drop in people that have wishlisted their games. That seems to have turned around. Like, a lot of sympathies have been kind of flowing in, and a lot of people have been wishlisting games again to kind of boost those numbers back up. But yeah, it's just, don't gamify your storefront. Like, this just feels like it should be common sense. Gamifying buying stuff and everything like that, that's fine, but gamifying everything around it is kind of really bullshit. And the big one that I've seen going around in the last day is a whole bunch of developers have been seeing reviews rolling in for their game, basically saying, you know, I'm only reviewing this for the Steam sale, because one of the steps to actually start the Grand Prix, like to be able to participate in it, is you have to review a game.
Yeah.
So people are just doing throwaway reviews, and some of them are being assholes about it, where they're doing shitty reviews for games, essentially.
Yep. User reviews are the worst. Kill them with fire. Yep.
There's so many things wrong with this whole thing. It's really dumb, and it just kind of shows that Valve didn't really think it out particularly well. Like, they thought it out in terms of like, how can we gamify all of these different elements, and they've seemed to be trying to bring it all together into a single event, but gamifying wish lists and gamifying reviews just seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I'm fine with it. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I know that's kind of contrary to everything you just said. As just a pure consumer at the bottom of that chain, I rarely pay attention to it, and I don't think about it, and I have no problem with it. That's just where I sit.
That's totally fair.
I think it's a real shame for devs that it was designed so poorly. I don't think that the fault is on any of the Steam users, because
no.
Yeah, I mean, I don't give a crap like what's going on in the background. If it's my wish list, I can do with it what I want. It's if Steam's screwing over the devs because of their poor design, that's on them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so hopefully they do it better next time.
I got involved in a minor debate with someone during the week who was sort of saying that it wasn't the fault of the wording that Steam used on the game rules, like it was the fault of the users for de-wish listing their games when they didn't have to.
No, it was totally on Steam.
I totally disagree with that. I think that Steam fucked up in the messaging. That's something that they own. So yeah,
we all agree on that. Like doing stuff like this is fine, but it's always going to be a risky move when like developers' livelihoods are at stake. And it just does feel like Valve didn't think things out.
Yeah.
But before this, I had no idea that wishlisting affected algorithms or visibility at all. I didn't know that. That's what I've learned that from this experience. So
I've learned that the sequence in which the games are arranged on your wish list actually makes a difference too. Like, I thought it was just a list. I didn't realize it was a priority ranking or anything. So
there's a whole bunch of stuff that affects your visibility inside of Steam, and it's not only like so reviews impact upon it, obviously. But also your wish listing and conversions. So if you go and look at a game and then navigate away from the game's store page, that is really bad for that game. It's actually a terrible thing, because it basically means that you've looked at it and then made the judgment that it's not worth buying. So Valve will devalue it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things in there like that all impact on your sale and you know, whether you're visible or not. It does seem like what Valve has done to remedy the wishlisting thing is that they've moved a whole bunch of those games that got hard impacted by the wish lists to the front of the store to give them visibility to increase their wish listing again.
Okay.
So that was a smart move. And I think that's why a bunch of these games have actually seen their numbers spike again, which is, yeah, that's a good thing. But in much less positive news, and also I was reading about it while we were talking about games at the very start, because it's had some updates. So Mordhau. So it's this medieval hack and slash game, action, first person.
Yep. Had a bit of buzz behind it in recent months.
Yeah. Like it had a Kickstarter that was very, very successful. It's gotten some very positive feedback upon the actual game itself. The devs went and announced they're going to add new playable characters, because currently in the game you can only play white dudes. They're going to be adding women, and they're going to be adding people of color, and you can kind of see where this is going.
Mm-hmm. What?
So, yeah, right?
Unsubscribe. Off the wish list. No, I'm kidding, of course.
So the player base, it turns out, is really toxic. There's a lot of super hyper toxic players in it.
Wait, are you saying gamers are toxic or can be toxic?
Can be toxic, yes.
I quickly corrected myself there.
But yeah, so a whole bunch of these Mordhau fans actually take massive issue with the fact that women and people of color being added because of, my medieval realism. Like, this is a game I might
fuck those
add.
people, seriously. No, fuck off.
This is a game where you can beat the shit out of people that are wielding a gigantic Zweihander with your fists, because your fists hit faster than the sword does, and so fists beat gigantic two-handed sword. Anyway, like, it's not a realistic game at all, and that sort of thing is just bullshit. It's a fucking video game. Like, realism hardly impacts on this shit. So the Mordhau devs go and basically tell PC Gamer in an interview that they plan to add an option so that players can toggle off all these characters that are women and people of color. So all that you would see if you had the toggle was basically other white dudes. Like, other people's choices about what they wanted to play in the game wouldn't matter. You'd only see white dudes. So the thing that this updated with before the podcast, while we were talking about games, was that now the Mordhau devs are claiming that this was never their plan, and that's not what they said at all. So they had this PC Gamer interview where they said this, and also in their Steam forums there are still posts where they said this.
Yeah.
But now they're saying that that's not what they said.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
May not be what they meant, but it's absolutely what they said.
Yep, it is absolutely what they said. And oh my god, like, what a clusterfuck. Like, so I'm just gonna say it right now. Like, developers, you choose who your audience is, right? Like, you decide on who it is that you want to be playing your game. And if you decide that you're going to add stuff in there that softens the blow for racists and sexists, guess what? You're making the active decision that your game is for racists and sexists. You know? Like, you shouldn't have to be catering to those people. That's an active decision that you're making. This isn't some miraculous, like, oh yeah, we're walking a fine line here and we're pleasing everyone. Like, that's not what's happening at all. Like, these people that are a vocal minority that'll be complaining about the fact that you're adding women and people of color to your game but you're catering to them now. That's who you have decided your audience is. Like, you've not satisfied women and people of color that want to play this. You've just gone and made them feel worse, essentially. Yeah. And it does genuinely make me wonder, does this development team have any women or people of color on it?
No, they've got the toggle off at the moment, Matt. They don't know.
Nice. It's just like a big red switch on the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brilliant.
Where did Janet go? She's gone. I'm here. I'm just a white man now. Sorry.
Fucking hell. I joke, but this is really shit. Really
it's
shit.
Super messed up.
I think I saw in one of the statements they said something like it's similar to using a chat filter where people can choose to filter out certain words. I'm like, people aren't words. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, and like, the game has issues right now with racism in the chat and everything like that. So put a chat filter on that and protect the people that want to be playing these characters. Like, come on.
Hang on, Matt. What about the game's artistic license?
Oh,
what about the creators' rights?
Yeah, to
to
reach through
create
this
art
microphone
as
and
they
fucking
see
strangle
fit?
you.
Yeah. Okay, look. Racism.
I'm just putting it out there for the sake of argument.
Racism isn't art.
Yeah. So I would love if there's this whole like meta thing behind all this where what they're actually planning to do is to put the toggle in the game and that anyone who switches it, it actually toggles them out of the game. That would be fucking mint.
See, oh my god, that'd be hilarious. Like
Yeah.
I love what Rust did, where when the game first came out, you could only play a white dude. And then they basically said, yeah, we're adding in the ability to play as, women and people of color to the game. And what they did is they didn't give players the option. They just randomly assigned a gender and a color of your skin to you. You didn't get a choice in the matter.
Just
and
like
the
at birth.
response was fucking hilarious. Like the people that were raging out over it. And it's just like, no, I love how smart that is.
Yeah.
But this just, this is
That
dumb.
finally explains what happened to me when I was born.
Exactly.
Damn it,
That's
I wanted
why
to
I'm
roll
Asian.
a white dude.
Yep.
Yeah.
White
so
privilege
much
is now
easier.
RNG.
I was born in Australia, so that's close enough.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, speaking of RNG, Hearthstone.
Hey!
Hey! Some more Hearthstone news today, or yesterday. New expansion on the horizon called Saviors of Uldum. And I'm pretty excited for this one because it's the first time that Blizzard are doing this kind of rolling storyline thing with the expansions, where the previous expansion, Rise of Shadows, had like a story about the villains hijacking this floating city, and then the Saviors of Uldum is kind of like the good guys fighting back, and they're bringing back the League of Explorers from a previous adventure.
The League of
who are
Explorers are fucking awesome. I love these characters. Yeah.
Super beloved characters. So it's Bran Bronzebeard, Reno Jackson, Seth Finley Mergleton, and Elise Trailblazer. Starblazer? Trailblazer? Starblazer, and then they made the Trailblazer card, which is different.
School Blazer.
Schoolblazer, yeah. So they're bringing those characters back, and they're also bringing back some other card types they've made in the past, like quests, which were really popular.
Yeah.
And they've got a new keyword, Reborn, which is kind of like a death rattle where once the minion dies, it'll come back to life once, but only with 1 health. And they've got a new type of a spell for the baddies, call it a Plague. That'll be like devastating area of effect spells, and a really funky cinematic trailer with like a kind of synth wavy song that's really cool that goes with it. So check out the trailer for Saviors of Uldum for a real bop.
Yeah. Even if you're not playing Hearthstone, just watch the trailer. It's real fun.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they got my money already. They have a pre-order bundle where if you get the mega bundle, then you get an alternate druid portrait, which is Elise, and I really like the character Elise, so I forked out for my mega bundle already. So
Yeah. I'm a sucker. I'll buy it like I always do.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, all right. If anyone's a fan of Remedy games, particularly Alan Wake, you might be interested to know that they have actually just regained the publishing rights for Alan Wake recently. So now this is something that happened a while back that, that actually for some reason Remedy Entertainment had lost the publishing rights for Alan Wake, which is part of the reason why it disappeared from a lot of online stores and you couldn't actually buy it. I think I got it from Steam just as they were delisting it a few years back. This is going back about 2 or 3 years because it's, it's a much beloved game by a lot of people. Like, it's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but it's a sort of noir detective tale that a lot of people sort of have some connections with as being like a fairly defining game for its time. But yeah, no, it's now back under that banner. And the cool thing is that actually potentially opens up the option for them to do some sort of screen adaptation of the story as well, which it seems like one of those games that would actually be a pretty good fit for a miniseries or a sort of Netflix style movie. So yeah, be very curious to see how that sort of happens in the future. Because apparently there was a TV series in production. So yeah.
When the Blair Witch game was being announced at E3 this year, I genuinely thought it was an Alan Wake game and got super fucking excited. Because, I'm not a huge horror game fan, but Alan Wake was so good. Like, it just punched, like, this fantastic line for me where I could actually play through it without shitting my pants.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And the story was great. Like, Oh my god! Like such a cool way of telling a story. Like if you haven't played it, Adrian or Christian, like you really actually should find a copy and play it because it's a great game.
Yeah,
I think I have it on Steam.
They were,
but I never played it.
They were working on a sequel like a while back, but they cancelled it, I think. So
Yeah.
What was Alan Wake's American Nightmare? I think I have that.
that's like DLC,
yeah.
extra story, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was if I remember rightly, it's like this kind of wacky, zany, non-canon like DLC essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. So Remedy's currently working on Control, which is that game that's going to be coming out in a few months' time. That's that super sci-fi looking game where you've got
I'm
the
looking
gun.
forward to that.
Yeah, it looks really cool. So it's got some pretty good buzz out of E3 too. So I'm pretty pumped for that game. Should be a lot of fun. But yeah, speaking of other cool sort of games from a little while back, Cuphead. So remember that thing? Cuphead's cool. So we were kind of a little surprised that there was no mention of the Cuphead DLC during E3 because we were expecting a bit more information about that because the year previous they had said that they're working on what's called Delicious Last Course as DLC, which is going to have a whole bunch of new bosses and potentially like a new island area to expand out the game. But they have been working hard on it, and they've just come out this week and said that they're officially delaying it to 2020. And the reason they've given is that they want to pretty much just straight up avoid crunch because they had some pretty unsavory work practices getting the initial game done, and they don't want to repeat that. So I think, well fucking done. Yep.
Yeah.
And doing the right thing by
course.
actually communicating that is probably, totally the right move. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Cuphead's not the sort of game that you definitely need to have here and now as opposed to waiting a little bit longer for. I can totally wait for more of that stuff, so yeah.
I mean, like, the development of that game, there's some horror stories that I've heard, and it's one of those things where a lot of people like kind of lifting it up as this indie darling, but those guys had mortgaged their houses and were basically facing bankruptcy if that game didn't sell.
Yeah.
And they basically just got incredibly lucky that it sold. Like, because literally when you're releasing a game, like you could have all the best marketing in the world, doesn't mean it's going to actually make sales.
Yeah.
So I'm super glad that they've basically, they're giving themselves a bit of a break.
Yeah, they deserve it. And especially given that, Studio MDHR will want to work on other games in future after this. So they don't want to set themselves up with a precedent that's going to make their studio culture like toxic from this point onwards.
Yeah.
Like they're getting it right now, setting the foundation, making sure that, it all goes well in the future. So yeah, well done. I think that's great news. So in this year riddled with stories of mistreatment and crunch and all sorts of other shit at different devs, it's good to hear some of these right decisions being made, even if they're in small pockets with indie studios. But yeah, it's good.
Funny, I was about to mention the fact that the Bungie's been doing this a lot lately as well, but then Bungie's also an indie studio now, so...
True. True. All right, well, on the topic of indies, it's about time to dive into our ever anticipated first episode of the month review of our party game of the month. So this month, we are going to be chatting about a little game called They Are Billions, which was submitted to us by Dale, who goes by Angry Pinnacus. I think you actually know Dale, don't you, Matt?
Yeah, Dale's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, so there you go. Now this is one that I actually did play a little bit of a while back because it's been in early access for a while, but there's been quite a bit added to the game since the last time I played it. So it was good to dive back in and have a look with fresh eyes because, the stuff that I'll sort of talk about tonight is different to what I would have talked about sort of way back then. So I can't remember how long it's been in early access, but I feel like the last time I touched it and maybe mentioned it briefly on the show was probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So going back a while. But I don't know if you guys remember, but back when it actually hit early access, it was a bit of a Twitch darling for a period of a few weeks. Like it was blowing up quite a bit on Twitch, and then it sort of disappeared while it underwent further development. But popular game back then, and definitely has had stuff added to it. So it is developed and published both by Numantian Games. And its official release date was actually the 19th of last month. So 19th of June, in terms of that's pretty recent. And it's currently going for just over $40 on Steam, like close enough for it to sort of just squeak under our limit with sales being on at the moment. So we maybe fudge that a tiny bit, but please don't recommend more expensive games to us. Keep it down. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at the time it was still in early access and its price was much lower.
That's likely as well.
What happened.
Yeah, that's entirely likely. So we've all had a bit of a chance to get some eyes on this over the last week or month or whatever. So I've sort of played a whole bunch of the game back in the early days, so I might just quickly speak about my impressions back then versus now, and then you guys can dive in with what you think. So back when I played in early access, the game was pretty much in like almost only a survival mode. There's a bunch of different modes for the game, and I should say overall, it's an RTS game that's built almost like a tower defense game. The reason why it's called They Are Billions is because the theme is literally you're trying to defend against like an onrushing horde of literally billions of zombies. And while that may not seem the case early on in the game, you've just got small pockets of them that you're trying to sort of manage. The numbers of them can build up quite quickly, and they actually do attack you in large waves that happen every sort of X number of days. It's like a timed event in the game. And when they start rushing at you en masse, it definitely gives the impression that there are fucking uncountable, ridiculous numbers of these things. And the game does a pretty good job of simulating that without grinding down to a halt of 2 or 3 frames per second with that many sort of assets on screen. So, or at least it hasn't for me and most people I've sort of spoken to that have played it. So that in itself is a little bit of a technical feat, I suspect. But it gives a really good atmosphere for this being like an impending doom kind of situation where you're building up, and you're kind of racing against the clock before the next big horde arrives. So it's got almost like a World War Z kind of feel to the way that those hordes come on. Would you guys agree with that? Sort of like a tidal wave of flesh? Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's got all the RTS elements that you'd expect of like a base builder RTS game. The tower defense stuff is very much sort of, what happens when those hordes start arriving and things start to get out of control. But the way that I played it back when it came into early access was that it was pretty much only the skirmish mode. There was no campaign at that time at all. The story around the setting was pretty much non-existent. It was kind of like a steampunky aesthetic. The art style, was almost very kind of dark, gritty comic book in a way. But it was pretty much just like you spawn on a random map. You farm resources, you try and build up your base as best as you can and try and last 100 days, essentially. And you could play the game at a whole bunch of different difficulty levels, and you got different amounts of victory points depending on how hard you set it for yourself. But finishing this game, like actually getting to 100 days, was freaking mentally hard. Like I've never succeeded in doing it back then when I initially played it. And I think very few people who sort of stream the game especially did, because it's just so unforgiving. Like the difference between failure and success with this game is a drop of a pin. So yeah. But now there's a campaign and there's a whole bunch of different game modes and a whole bunch of other stuff. So dive in, guys. What did you sort of pick up coming in for the first time now that it's been properly released? What else caught your eye?
I was surprised by how few options there were in the game, like how few units there were, and like buildings and that sort of thing. Like I have a feeling that maybe in early access they were intending to add a lot more to the game, but like for example the units that you have to fight against the zombies, you've got the rangers, the soldiers, and the snipers, but that seemed to be basically it. I read on a wiki that there are some like special characters or something that you can get later, like individual units. But those 3 core unit types seem to be basically it for the whole game. And same with like the variety of buildings. Like when I started seeing like an interface that was very much like StarCraft or Red Alert or that sort of thing, I was anticipating a lot more variety and a lot more like options in upgrades for the units or different upgrade their guns or get them transports or that sort of thing. And it's just it was a bit shallow for me. Like I feel like the core gameplay was fun and I like the look and feel of the game, but it felt quite shallow, and I'm not sure if it maybe should have come out of early access when it did.
So this is you having played campaign and skirmish?
I played the first campaign mission and then and skirmish. So I went because I know in the campaign it locks down what you can build, which is fine. That other RTS games do that too. But then I went into the skirmish to check what all the options were, and was disappointed to see that there wasn't much more than was available in the campaign.
Yeah, I pretty much entirely agree. Like it felt pretty shallow for me. I should kind of preface this. Like I think a big reason I didn't like it is that I'm not a huge RTS fan, but I'm a fan of 4X games. But when it comes to RTSs, like they don't usually click with me that much.
What's 4X? Sorry,
4X are like Stellaris, like
expand, exploit, exterminate, and What's the last one?
Extinct.
Extinct. No, it's not that. No. Expand,
basically-
exploit, exterminate, and
X-rated.
Exploit.
I said exploit already.
Oh, sorry.
I'll get it.
Yeah. So basically 4X games are strategy games that you have more options than just kind of defeating enemies to win. It's more than just combat.
Okay.
So Civilization falls into that.
Explore.
Stellaris falls into
Gotcha.
that.
Explore, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so
Exfoliate.
Exfoliate. I mean, you're definitely exfoliating the billions of zombies off the face of the planet in this game.
They have skin too.
They definitely need to exfoliate. Like, it's all falling off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, I didn't dislike it, but I definitely could see, like, when I was playing the campaign, so it took me 2 attempts to finish the first level because nothing prepares you for that wave of zombies.
Oh, no.
And that's kind of a good and a bad thing. Because it feels like the game should kind of encourage you, like, hey, you should probably build a shit ton of units. But it doesn't really do that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm running around my group of units and I'm having no problems picking off enemies around the world and everything. Oh, God. There's a gigantic wave of just death marching upon my gates and I'm fucked. Like, there's just no way to kind of prepare for that. And the game doesn't really do much to prepare you for it. But I enjoyed that mission. But after playing it, I'm like, I could probably do this a couple more times and I would get really bored of the game because it is essentially just that. It's building up, it's setting up the tower defense, putting up walls and such, building just a massive fuck off army, basically. Like, that's the way that you beat the massive fuck off number of zombies. And I just kind of found that really kind of shallow. Like, there are other unit options and everything like that, which will do a better job of killing zombies or kill zombies at longer distances or whatever. But it just doesn't feel like it has the, StarCraft, you have like a bit of a rock, paper, scissors kind of feel to it because certain units do better against other units. But in this case, it's just fucking zombies, right? And it's just a matter of how quickly can you take the zombies out before they get into your base and how many walls and gates do you have set up to kind of keep them at bay. There were some parts in there that I really loved, like the incredibly bad voice acting. Like, holy fuck, I love the voice acting.
The train has arrived at the station.
It's so garbage, but it feels like kitschy. It almost feels intentionally bad.
You want to know what was really great for me is that I couldn't afford the party game of the month this month, having just played Sekiro. So I watched Christian play the game via screen sharing over Discord. Now, the issue with screen sharing is that the person watching the screen has no audio. So all I got was Christian going, the train has arrived at the station. and like, I, instead of hearing the actual voice lines, I got them secondhand by Christian reenacting them every time someone said something.
I don't know what would have been.
It was a delight, actually.
You were missing out on the best part of the game, quite honestly. Like, the dialogue in the opening cutscene. Holy shit. Like, just the leader talking down at you and everything like this. So just like, oh man, like this is edgy as fuck. Like, if you fail, don't come back. And it's just like, okay, I love it. I hate it, but I love it.
He was totally a steampunk edgelord. It's exactly what he was. Yeah.
It honestly felt like watching The Room. Like, just seeing this really bad acting in action. And that's why I kind of liked it, because it was a good kind of bad, but it was definitely not good. But yeah, like the fact that that's kind of the main thing that kind of stuck out to me. Like, there's definitely a lot of potential in the game, but I agree. Like, it definitely shouldn't be out of early access yet. It feels like there should have been a bit more to it. And certainly it just does not. It just lacks the depth that I would expect from a game to be worth $40. You know?
Yeah, definitely at that cost. Yeah.
What do you think, Adrian, for what you watched?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I like I say, I didn't play it, so I can't claim to have a great insight into that. I just sort of watched Christian do it, which was its own kind of joy in a way, especially when Christian went out exploring and saw a bunch of zombies. I was like, there's so many zombies. It's like, Christian, there's like 12 zombies. The game's called They Are Billions. I think you could expect a few more zombies before this play is finished. So, I mean, I enjoyed spectating the game. I like the art style. Like, I quite enjoyed the kind of cell shaded kind of cartoon. It's hard to explain. It's not really cell shaded. It's just The sprites are sort of poppy, and I really enjoyed that. And I liked the way like all the zombies are animated. Granted, I only got to see, I didn't get to see billions on the screen at once. That would have been something interesting. But yeah, it seemed, I agree with Christian in that I think when you create a game that has tech trees, you can't just give us like a couple of dead ends. You need to give us something fun to work towards. And like, even though the drive of the game is not necessarily to make a huge army with tanks and, walkers and airships and then annihilate a base, and it is a bit more tower defense, I think it still would have been cool to have, like a steam mech, or considering it's steampunk, it's disappointing that there's no steampunk vehicles in there, or no, and no steampunk mechs. Like, isn't that like one of the coolest things about steampunk is the technology?
There's definitely some more tech stuff later on, like particularly with actual tower weapons and things that you get. So yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, I just think it would have been cool if there was like some vehicles and stuff that they threw in there. But from what I saw, from what Christian saw, those tech trees just seem kind of boring and bland. So that's a bit of a criticism. But I like the idea of mixing up the genre and having sort of a bit of a tower defense or anything, because I'm a fan of tower defense. So yeah, I mean, that's all I could really judge it on from what I saw. But the highlight, definitely Christian's reenacted voice lines. Yeah,
like
that's part of it.
Certainly on the tech tree thing, I've got to add on to that. Like, it suffers from this issue that I think a lot of bad tech trees in games suffer from, where the perks you get are invisible. So it's like, hey, if you research this thing, you'll get 20% extra food when you put down this building, and it's like, well, that's nice, but like it's not fun. There's nothing fun about that. Whereas,
that's right, yeah.
Like the very first thing I picked up when I got the tech tree, and I mean, I didn't actually play another level to make use of it, but to research the soldier unit, because of everything else. It's like, hey, this is a new tool I can play with in comparison to, the tents I've got can hold an extra single worker, and it just doesn't feel fun to kind of play with.
Yeah,
I did play an additional level in the game, which like this Diablo-esque kind of exploration mission, and I got to say, it's bad. Like it kind of controls badly. You control a single unit. It's not particularly good. A lot of the vibes I get out of this game, and I haven't done my research, but it wouldn't surprise me at all, is that this game totally started off as a StarCraft mod.
Yeah, they definitely tried to chase some of the styles that they've achieved with StarCraft 2 in particular. Yeah. Like
even the art style looks like, the models could be put straight into StarCraft and they'd fit in pretty well, except everything has a brown shit filter on it. Like that's basically the way the art style kind of looks at the game, which isn't to downplay. It's a good looking game, but it does kind of feel like, it has early 2000s video game aesthetic of everything's brown. But yeah, it does feel like it would have been almost better as a StarCraft mod, because then at least you'd have like different empires to choose from and just like defend against massive billions of Zerg waves and shit. Like that could be interesting, but again, not like it's bad. It's just mediocre, and it's just not worth the price of entry, in my opinion.
I think the biggest issue for me with the game is that I think that the one core thing that it's been designed to do, which is to have that really tight, controlled, resource managed sort of tower defense against hordes of zombies kind of thing, that's like the game's core, and it does that one core thing really, really well. It's when it tries to deviate from that I think it kind of really dilutes itself. Like the campaign, for the most part, I think it serves a function in kind of teaching you some aspects of the game, and it's fun to have like a little bit of a theme and story background with the world setting, even though, as inconsequential as it is. But like you're absolutely right, Matt. Like that mission that you mentioned where you're taking control of the lone character and sort of doing like a single character play through like an area to achieve an objective. It actually reminded me, it reminded me a little bit of StarCraft 2, but it also reminded me more of how they used to do those sorts of missions in some of the early Command and Conquer games, like with Tanya. Remember that? Like in Red Alert and stuff?
Totally.
Yeah, and the big difference between when they did that in Command and Conquer versus StarCraft is that the StarCraft equivalents were actually kind of decent, because they were developed characters that actually had personalities and good story reasons for doing what they were doing, and they didn't outlast their welcome. Whereas in sort of Command and Conquer, it was kind of like a lot of the time you were playing those missions and it's just like, let me just finish this so I can get back to the cool game again. And I think it was more that. with They Are Billions. Like, you kind of just wanted to get through it to get back to actually, you know, defending against hordes of zombies again. It wasn't that important. So
yeah. Like, also the way that that mission was designed, like, okay, so you're going to fight through all of these enemies, collect these items scattered around the level in this kind of, you know, item finding, you know, the hidden item games. It kind of felt a little bit like that because stuff wasn't highlighted.
Yeah.
You'd collect those things, fight zombies, get to the end, collect the mission item, and then be like, why isn't the mission over? And then you realize it's because you have to backtrack through all the empty corridors and exit out the way you came in.
Yeah.
And it just like extends the time of the mission unnecessarily. Like, why not just let me end at that point? Why can't I just vouch to leave from here?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wasn't a fan of that, but just the mission in general, like even ignoring that part just wasn't interesting. I was just walking around, clicking on zombies, you know, using health kits when I needed it, grabbing objects, and then I was done. Like there was nothing really about it that grabbed me. Not in comparison, like the tower defense and the RTS stuff, I can totally see that being somebody's jam, and it's just not mine.
Yeah. No, I think where the game's at its best is when you treat it like a tower defense roguelike. Like, it's pretty unforgiving. Like, the fact that you can't, for the most part, I mean, campaign accepted, because that's kind of a different thing, because you're playing like an overarching sort of campaign of linked missions. But when you play like a single scenario, you can't go back to a previous save point. Like, if you fail the mission, it's done. Like, it's gone. So, but it really encourages you to use the pause feature often. Like, you can pause the game at any moment and sort of look at the map and work out what you're going to do, because the margin of failure is so fine. Like, if a single zombie gets into one of your habitated sort of areas, like your sort of tents or something like that, they just explode out. Like, and you will lose so fast. Like, it's not like another RTS like your Command and Conquers or your StarCraft, where you can have like a massive fight sort of near your base and still come out of it okay as long as you manage to beat the enemy back. In this case, if a couple of them get through, you're fucked. It's over. So they just infect your population centers and just spread like wildfire. It's nuts. So, but yeah, like the fact that the units earn experience and actually get better, I think is kind of cool. I actually spent ages like trying to work out the best way to defend my base, and sort of getting up to around sort of 60, 65 days and failing repeatedly, and just tweaking my approach every time and going in like almost exactly like a roguelike, and just sort of making small adjustments to my plan to sort of do better. And I eventually settled on a strategy which was more around sort of pocket defense. Like, you actually build different layers of walls with towers behind them in sort of little bubbles almost, and just let the zombie horde hit each of those bubbles and just move your stuff behind them to try and like defend the next one and let them collapse, almost like a vehicle sort of crumple zone at the front. Like, you expect it to have an accident. It's just a matter of not like letting all the occupants inside die when part of the car like deliberately crumbles. So yeah, that's
a strategy I ended out with in the campaign, and it does feel like the way that you play it is you want to rapidly expand outwards, so you give yourself more crumple room.
Yeah, totally.
And then those areas towards the edges of your empire are expendable, essentially. Like, you're protecting that core of your empire where everybody lives, because God forbid a zombie get in there.
Yeah, you can be clever about how you funnel them in too, like, because you can usually tell the direction that the wave's coming from. And if you like deliberately have a couple of crumple zones set up where the zombies are going to go down one side of a wall and continue on that way because it's the easy entrance, you can just hoard them into a pit and just like smash them with emplacements and things. There's other sorts of zombies that come out too. Like, you've got these big fatties that start to pop up a little bit later into the game, which is just, if you've actually got any sort of characters or snipers in particular, then you can try and take them out before they get a bit too close to the walls. Then that's another strategy you can employ. So it definitely gets more detailed and more involved the further you get in. But I appreciate what you guys probably saw was not all of that, and it doesn't get as deep as other RTSs. But that might actually be part of the design, because I feel like going too far out into a tech tree would almost be a trap. Like, you kind of just want to do the core thing and do it really well, as opposed to sort of mucking about with too many options, because then that'll distract you from the core things that are what keeps you safe. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But in that case, like, I would recommend that the current tech tree they have should lose a lot of the options it has on it.
Totally, yeah.
It has the trappings of having more without actually having more. If they just restructured the UI a little bit, and I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but they could design it in a way that didn't give the impression of having as much depth as it should have.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but I don't know. I kind of agree the price may be a little over what it should be. But I had a lot of fun with it at least. I think it's a very cool game. Slightly overpriced, but it's kind of my jam, so I was happy to pay it.
Yeah.
It's something I enjoy, so yeah.
I enjoy the time I had with it. It's not my game. So
Yeah.
I think the major disappointment for me and what really turns it off is the fact that there isn't an option in the game to turn all the zombies into white dudes. If there was an option in the menu where I could flick a switch and they all just, get rid of the zombies, turn them into white guys, I'd be happy.
Yep, absolutely.
You know what? I'm down with that.
It's the contagion toggle. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Nice. All right, well, that is our party game of the month. They are Billions. So if that sounds like your kind of jam, then jump in and have a time. But aside from that, we have to roll up our one for next month. So now, Matt, you've got the rolling stuff ready, but while you're getting that sorted, Christian, why don't you tell everybody how they can suggest stuff to us? What do they need to know?
Yes. So your game suggestions, we've got a couple of guidelines. So we want you to suggest games that are actually released. So nothing coming soon, but if it's in early access, that's fine. We want it to be multi-platform or PC. Or it could be a mobile game. You could recommend it's a mobile game, but just no console exclusives. We don't want anything more than 40 Australian, and quite honestly, you could even bring it down further than that. The cheaper you can offer us, the better, frankly.
Free games are totally fun too. There's a lot of good freeware ones out there.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And the last thing is that it should be a style of game that we don't need to invest a whole heap of time into. So no like MMOs probably, something that we can get a good feel from in a couple of hours. And you can send those suggestions through to us by email, Twitter, or Facebook. That's mail at partyloaded.com for the emails, at partyloadedshow for Twitter, and partyloaded on Facebook.
That's it. All right, Matt, over to you, matey.
Did I buy you enough time?
No, I've had it here in the list since we started, so I didn't do anything.
Sure.
Nice. All right.
I'm gonna hit the randomize button. We've got too many for me to use the dice, which disappoints me because I like rolling dice. But here we go.
Having a good list is good. Yeah.
Yes, good long list is good. Oh, yeah. So Tim's gonna be happy. We're playing Teleblast.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So Teleblast is a game made by a local dev in WA. So Tim Valletta submitted this one. He submitted his own game. Fuck, who does that?
Tim, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. No,
So-
I got to spend some time with Tim at PAX last year. He's a super cool dude. So
The one thing that's going to be interesting about this is we're going to have to get together in person because it's a local multiplayer game. So
yeah, interesting.
That sounds fun.
Yep.
You mean I have to look? I have to look at your actual faces.
you don't have to.
No.
Like I can turn on my white dudes. Oh, hang on.
Funny. Yeah. No, it sounds like fun. I played a tiny bit of this at PAX, and I know there's been a bunch of work since then. But yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, how would you describe it? It's almost like a
It looks like kind of 4-player Pong almost.
it's a lot more detailed than that. Yeah, it's kind of like a dexterity puzzler, I guess I would describe it as.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say foreplay Pong. That sounded a bit more enticing.
I don't know.
That would explain why we need to meet up in person as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just watching the video on Steam, so I don't actually know how the game works, but it looks like air hockey kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
it's
maybe I'm
fast
wrong.
and frantic and very arcadey is what I'd say. So yeah, I think it's the sort of game that we'll have a good fun time playing. Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be the sort of depth that we go into with, say, They Are Billions in terms of the mechanics. It'll be more talking about the precise sort of feelings it generates and kind of, the crafted nature of it as an experience with multiplayer sort of stuff as the focus. So yeah.
You know what? I do agree with what Christian said about it might be fun. I think what the appeal of this game will be is that it'll bring us together. We can have like a pizza night.
Yeah.
And have like a gaming thing.
Fuck yeah.
It's it'll be good for that,
Yep.
if nothing else.
For sure.
You know what we could totally do? We could actually pull in Tim and then record that episode while we're all in the same room together playing it. That could be fun.
All right, let's drop Tim a line after the episode. I'm liking the sound of this.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Very cool. So next month we will be playing and reviewing Teleblast. Looking forward to it. Well done, Tim. finally getting us to roll your game up. Nice. So yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Aside from the contacts that Christian mentioned before, if you want to check out more of our stuff, make sure you go over to the hub at channelendgame.com, where you'll find links to all of our latest episodes, our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/partyloaded, and all of our YouTube content as well, which is youtube.com/channelendgame. And yeah, we tend to post all of our schedules for our streams up on the Twitter as well. So if you're following us there, you'll generally work out what's happening in that regard. Minecraft Monday streams are still ongoing. I've been doing that every week, and I'll have to miss it for 1 week next week. So I'm actually going away on a short family trip, but I'm going to make up for it by doing a weekend stream instead. I beat the Ender Dragon, guys. I beat the Ender Dragon in hardcore last stream. So yeah.
Impressive.
That's
I'm
it.
proud of you.
I was very happy that I did not
By
die.
which I mean, I'm very disappointed you haven't died yet.
Yeah. Well, I finally discovered that there's actually a day counter in the when you F3 and see all the stats on screen, you can actually see the number of in-game days that you've been in there.
That's neat.
I now finally have a metric by which to measure how I'm going. So yeah, it's one of those things that's been there the whole time. I just never noticed it because there's so much junk on screen. So yeah, it's good. But yeah, that's a thing. And other ad hoc games and streams as the time goes on. We all played Sea of Thieves on the weekend as well, which we totally forgot to mention at the front of the show. So
We did.
That was good fun. Christian, I honestly couldn't tell if you were enjoying yourself or not when we played together.
It's still not my. It's definitely not my
I can
game.
answer that.
Yeah.
It was better playing with you guys.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can tell you
but
definitely enjoyed yourself when you tested out the barrel of gunpowder in the top of the crow's nest technique.
That was the highlight for sure.
Yeah. One of my classes I'm teaching at the moment, I'm actually making comparisons because we're talking about like gamer personality types, the battle personality types. I'm pretty sure that you and Adrian probably fall very, very solidly into the killer archetype. Where,
Killer?
Yes. Yeah, like you like games where you get to kill things and achieve very, very clear objectives, which Sea of Thieves is not. Like, it is not that game. It's much more of an explorer archetype personality kind of game.
I like explorer games.
Yeah,
I like. I really enjoyed, for example, when Christian and I first got into DayZ, and like it was just all about running around and surviving and exploring. I know you had to kill, but we didn't kill anything for the
one
first.
of my favorite
like,
games of all time is Journey. So
That's what, yeah. The Journey's a very different game, but yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like, Journey also still has a very clear objective, right?
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Gamer archetypes. I think we need to do a whole episode on that. Actually, that
We
sounds
totally
like a great
could.
topic.
Like, there's so much
I
there.
don't like it. It just reminds me of horoscopes.
Nice.
I'm a unique snowflake. Okay.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Well, us all unique snowflakes are going to hop off now and go play some of said games. But thank you everybody for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back again same time next week with a whole bunch of things to talk about. But until then, good night.
Good night.
Bye. The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.